there is a sense that chapter is just, just a list of names, or it's just setting the scene, which it is. It is actually setting the scene. The name of the first chapter is Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we're going to share this on the screen, so that way you can also see what you're reading. So can you share the screen?
Yeah.
We should just go through that.
Somebody's unmuted.
Okay. So you guys can see the screen? So this is how we do our classes. So first we are going to go through the chunk of verses that are sort of, in Bhagavad Gita, there are like these verses which are sort of clubbed together and they sort of form a theme. And so what we'll do is we'll read through those verses starting from text 9, I think close to like text 20, I think. And then read that, and then we'll find the theme that binds or threads those verses together. And then we'll do a PowerPoint presentation on those particular verses.
So that way you're still going through the Bhagavad Gita verse by verse, and we're trying to bring out the meaning behind those verses, an explanation that we can apply in our lives. So our focus is to understand the Bhagavad Gita, but also to be able to apply it in our day-to-day lives. So in the last couple of sessions, we did the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, and then we covered text 1 through 11, where we saw Dhritarashtra asking the question, what's going on in the battlefield? And we saw Duryodhana, who is the son of Dhritarashtra, the blind king, his diplomacy in trying to motivate his teacher, who's the leader of their army, to fight the best. And we also saw the list of names that came through. Basically, Duryodhana is taking stock of what's his firepower and what's the firepower on the other side. And now the battle is about to begin, and let's see what happens next.
Also, another very important point that we talked about last time was how, when we have these feelings of attachment, then from those feelings of attachment generates great fear. And so in Dhritarashtra's case, as well as in Duryodhana's case, they're both extremely attached to the idea of acquiring the kingdom. And as a result, one of them is actually, being a hustler. And we talked about what that means, that how he's trying to perch himself and show himself as being greater than the others. And Dhritarashtra, on the other hand, is very, very fearful. And in that state of fear, he actually, speaks that first verse, that famous first verse of the Bhagavad Gita. So now we'll continue with that.
So text 12, Tasya sanjanayan harsham guru vriddha pitamaha simhanadam vinadyoche sankham dadmo pratapavan.
Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy.
Tata shankasya bhiryasya panamanakha gomukha sahaseva bhyandanta sasabdastumulo bhava.
After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous.
Tata shvetir yukte mahati shandane stito adava pandavaschaiva divya sankho pradatmatu.
On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded the transcendental conch shells.
Panchajanyam rishikesho devadattam dhananjaya pondram dhatmo mahashankham bhima karma vrikodaraha.
Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya, Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pondran.
Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthira Nakula Sahadevascha Sukhosha Manipushpako Kashascha Parameshwascha Shikhandi Maharatha Drishtadumno Viratascha Satyakischa Parajitaha Drupado Draupadeyascha Sarvasha Prithvipate Sobhadrascha Mahabahu Shankhan Dadmo Prithak Prithak.
King Yudhishthir, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, Anant Vijaya, and Nakul and Sahadev blew the Sughosha and Mani Pushpaka. The great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as a mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells.
Saghoshodhat Rashtanam Hridayani Vidarayat Navasya Prithvim Chaiva Tumulo Abhyanunadayan.
The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra.
I think we should just do it till here.
Yeah. So what's going on here? It's all we are reading right now is just the sound that is being vibrated by all of these different conch shells by different warriors, on both sides, and the effect it has on different people, how they're receiving it.
Yeah, it's describing the impact of sound and how the sound made by the conch shells of Arjuna and Krishna and the Pandava brothers has an impact that shatters the heart of the Kauravas. The same sound, when heard by the Pandava soldiers, it really rejuvenates them, and they are like all pumped up to put their best foot forward. So we see the impact of sound, and we also see how one sound is described as transcendental, and the other sound is described, the sound made by the Kauravas is described as tumultuous. And also it's very interesting to see the names of the conch shells, how the conch shells are named. So that kind of speaks about a deeper principle, that how in spiritual domain, everything is personal.
Yeah, also was thinking that how, there is a very powerful understanding in the Vedas. In fact, the whole process of spiritual realization as given in the Vedas can actually be said in terms of the yoga of sound, that it is actually a way of connecting through sound. So Bhakti Yoga can actually be translated as a yoga of sound. And why is that? It is because sound actually moves consciousness. So wherever we are right now in our state of consciousness, whatever it is that we are experiencing within the mind and within the heart, it is a result of the kind of sound vibration that we associate with. So what we're going to do is so we saw how all of these verses, there is a theme that we can see through, or a thread that we can see through all of these verses, and that is the power of sound, and how sound is being blown right at the beginning of such a big battle, and the effect it is having on all of these different warriors. And so let's maybe perhaps delve a little bit deeper into the yoga of sound.
So we have a small presentation that we'll share with you on the yoga of sound.
So sound is actually, as we were saying, there are different kinds of sound, right? And so, go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of the things that will that kind of steers our life in a certain direction is what is our vibration, or what is the sound we are linking ourselves with. Kauravas were linking with a certain sound, the Pandavas were linking with this transcendental sound, and we see the impact of that. So this is a question that we can apply in our day-to-day life, is what is the kind of sound we are associating with.
And in fact, sometimes, there are actually studies that show, actually even studies in psychology, that people who live, say, by the road and they experience a lot of road noise, they are more prone to becoming sick with heart disease or different things. Toxic sounds, they can really have an impact on our physical health. And many times those sounds can be outside, and sometimes those sounds can be also inside of us. And we'll go deeper into that and see how that is the case. But in any case, the vibration that we are surrounding ourselves with, whether it's a vibration of social media, or it's the constant, breaking news cycle, right? It's constantly breaking us, right? All, our constant exposure. So we're going to explore all of this, that what is this vibration that we're associating with, and what is the experience of that vibration? Well, how does it impact us?
We live in a world of sound, actually, whether we like it or not. And sound is not just the sound that we hear through our ears, but there are different kinds of sounds. So we'll explore that also in this yoga of sound.
So here, it's very interesting that the Vedas, which are at least, were put down in writing 5,000 years ago, they actually, speak such profound philosophy. And this is actually from Srimad Bhagavatam, from a purport, where it is stated in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. And it's interesting how even in the Bible, it says in the beginning there was the word, right? So in the same way, the Vedanta also talks about how sound is the origin of everything, our entire engagement in the material world.
And it goes into great detail, Bhagavad Purana, to describe how everything is generated from sound. It gives the systematic understanding how to really make sense of. Before we do that, we can see how even modern science is finding that the whole universe is actually resting on sound, coming from sound. Everything is made from the sound.
In fact, sometimes when we hear these kind of statements, one of our biggest challenges as a rational person, is the fact that how do we process this? And the Vedas just, present axiomatic truths. They just say it, okay, everything is made up of sound, but it doesn't really provide the proof or the research needed. And so it's very interesting that more and more, as we delve into the findings of quantum physics and the world of here, he's, I think, a particle physicist. We see how the knowledge that is given in these ancient books and the empirical evidence that is coming out from all this experimentation, how they're sort of all both coming together and creating a sort of a cohesive story. So this is Michio Kaku, who I think is the founder of particle physicist.
String theory.
String theory, right? So he's speaking here.
I work in something called
string theory. Just one second.
That's
Let me share this the sound also. So I have to reshare it with you guys.
Yeah. For a living. In fact, that's my day job. I'm the co-founder of string field theory, one of the main branches of string theory. The latest version of string theory is called M theory, M for membrane. So we now realize that strings can coexist with membranes. So the subatomic particles we see in nature, the quarks, the electrons, are nothing but musical notes on a tiny vibrating string. What is physics? Physics is nothing but the laws of harmony that you can write on vibrating strings. What is chemistry? Chemistry is nothing but the melodies you can play on interacting vibrating strings. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. And then what is the mind of God that Albert Einstein eloquently wrote about for the last 30 years of his life? We now, for the first time in history, have a candidate for the mind of God. It is cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace. So first of all,
this goes on, but it's interesting how the Vedas actually, have affirmed that everything is actually made of sound, and it's from sound that everything originates.
And it's not just the sound that we know. Sometimes when we hear the word sound, we think that just the sound that we hear from our ears. But there's, as Michio Kaku is explaining, the sound on which the electrons and the subatomic particles are vibrating is definitely not the sound we hear through our ears. It's a different kind of sound, subtle sound. And that's subtle, different levels of sound that we'll explore what is presented in the Vedanta.
So it's kind of interesting because in the Krishna book, which is actually a summary of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a statement which says that the whole world is actually made up of Krishna's singing.
Flute,
Krishna's flute songs. So when you hear that, it sounds like something romantic or something like, okay, just a very beautiful poetic way of saying it. But to think that it actually has such strong scientific basis as well is actually quite amazing.
So Sankhya philosophy, which is also an important part of the Vedanta, it explains that how everything in this universe is manifested. So the first thing that becomes manifest is sound, and from the sound appears the next element, which is air, and from air comes fire, from fire comes water, and from water comes earth. So each of these elements is also containing a quality. So sound contains the quality of hearing, air contains the quality of touch. So our touch sensation comes from air, but each of these elements also has the quality of the previous element along with its own unique quality. So air also has the quality of sound. That's why we can hear the air. The fire, which gives us the sense of form, and the fire also has the quality of sound and also air within it. And similarly, we can go on. Water gives the unique quality of taste, and earth gives the unique quality of smell. So, anyways, when we say earth, it means everything that is solid. When we say water, everything that is liquidy in the universe. Fire means fire, electricity, anything that can burn something.
Or even metabolism.
Or metabolism.
Yeah.
So like that. So, but anyway, Sankhya philosophy describes that sound is the origin of all the different elements and the Pancha Mahabhutas.
So it's kind of interesting because in our Vedic understanding, and it's kind of interesting because just to backtrack, I've been a student of Hindustani classical music. And when you hear some of these masters speaking about the 7 notes, for example, or when they speak about ragas, which is a certain combination of the 7 notes in this music system, they say that they can actually see the swaras, they can actually see these notes. And whenever I used to hear that, I used to always think, oh, okay, what does that even mean? That you can actually hear or you can actually see the sound. So it's interesting because in the Vedas, it talks about how sound actually has a form. Both material sound and spiritual sound, they both have a form. And so here we see that this is an experiment. It's called the field of sematics, where certain sounds, they create certain forms. And so, in fact, there was, I think, an experiment done by some Japanese scientist who also did that sound. I don't think we're talking about that, but we can just share that how he tried to apply different kinds of sound on different like water particles, and based on the kind of quality of sound, the water molecules would rearrange itself in a certain design. So if there were harsh words used, then it would become very chaotic, and if it was beautiful sound, then it would become a very beautiful symmetrical formation. So this is
to correlate how the Sankhya says that form comes from sound. So here we can see in a modern experiment how the form comes from sound. Actually, sound is creating those forms. So we'll only show part of it.
Maybe we can share the rest on Circle as well.
Yeah.
The film you're about to see has no characters. If you spare a little of your imagination, it is a film to describe to you the effect of cymatic frequencies on matter.
kind of correlates with what we hear in Sankhya, that sound has an impact on all the other 4 elements.
And to think that, so this is why such an emphasis on the quality of sound that we are associating with. To think that, if this is the kind of impact that sound has on earth, water, fire, then what impact, the sound that we are hearing constantly from outside, as well as from the internal chatter of our mind, what impact that must have on our physical being and our mental being.
So this is a very interesting real life situation where there's this person who manages the sewage plant in Berlin, and his name is Anton Stuckey, and he discovered a new way of increasing the output of the sewage plant. So sewage plant is where bacteria act on the sewage, and they produce something useful from that sewage waste. And he found that by playing the melody of Mozart to the sewage, he found that stimulated the microbial bacteria in the sewage, and then the daily output actually increased quite a bit. And he played with different music, and then he finally settled on Mozart. And so here we can see how the sound is impacting. It's the bacteria, they were much happy to produce to process the sewage in a more efficient way.
And I guess I was just thinking that we live right now in a world of constant sound and constant chatter. There used to be a time where you would have to turn on a radio, or you would have to turn on the television to actually have access to, constant sound. But now, because of social media, we're constantly associating with sound, and that sound, and what impact that sound vibration has on us. How it's impacting us, our mental well-being, our mental health, all of those things are so deeply connected with the kind of sound vibration that we're hearing. And for whatever reason, right now, the sound that we are hearing is, a lot of it is just fear-inducing, anxiety-producing sound. And there are actually psychologists who talk about going on sound like news fast, where they say that just completely disconnecting ourselves from all kinds of news cycles so that one can actually, feel happy. And the Vedas actually go into so much of discussion on this, and they talk about two kinds of sounds. So there is one kind of sound which is called the living sound, and the other is the non-living or the dead sound, material sound or spiritual sound. So material sound has this quality that it always produces anxiety.
And it binds us to matter. It attaches ourselves to matter. And Vedanta Sutra, this is one of the aphorisms in Vedanta Sutra. It says, Anavritti Shabda, that by sound alone, one can dissolve one's material existence. So Anavritti means kind of freeing oneself for liberation. And Shabdat means sound. So our entanglement begins from sound, but sound, we can use another kind of sound to free ourselves. And that is what we can see in these verses of Bhagavad Gita. The Kauravas, their heart is now filled with anxiety and confusion when they hear the sound, and that same sound uplifts the Pandavas.
Yeah, it's like the principle of like cures like, right? So one kind of sound, so in Ayurveda, for example, if you have had indigestion caused by milk, then, maybe, another kind of milk product is recommended, yogurt, that can actually help with the indigestion. So same thing, one kind of sound binds us, but another kind of sound, even though they're both sound, can actually free us. And that is what the Vedanta Sutra is saying, Anavriti Shabdat, which means that one can get liberated by sound alone. And so here Prabhupada is talking about the particular sound capable of doing that is the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna. So there are many such mantras. We'll get into this a little bit later. What is a mantra and what is the spiritual sound? But one thing that we can take away from this is material sound has this quality of inducing anxiety, fear, stress, dissatisfaction, and desires. So everything that we experience in this world actually starts with a sound. So for example, a construction, a big skyscraper building that we see actually has its origin in sound. How is that? Because some person sat and thought about it.
So the architect who sat with and worked with the person, owner of the building, there's a lot of exchange of ideas and thoughts and vision. And we'll see how that is also sound.
Or even the desire that comes, right? That I want to build a skyscraper building here. So that desire or that thought is also a sound. So here we will also, now in the next couple of slides, we'll see how the Vedas actually talk about sound in a much broader way. It's not just, what we speak, it's also the thoughts we have, and those also impact us.
So this is like the anatomy of sound that is presented in the Vedas. And you can see that it says we have these 7 chakras, and sound, what we hear from our mouth and through our ears is just the tip of the iceberg. Below the surface, there are 3 more layers of sound that we may relate to, but we are not aware that they are working inside us.
I mean, to some extent, we may even be aware, because what we speak is just what's in our mind. So before the words actually come out of our mouth, they actually form in our mind, right? And then, of course, there's intelligence too. So all of this we will get into more detail in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, but we're just presenting to you the ideas of different levels of the self.
Yeah.
Right.
And like the sound enters when we, for a person, the sound enters first the root chakra, is a spiritual sound, and then it goes into, it further rises as an idea or image or a vision, as it's called, Pashanti Va. And then it further rises into a mental sound in terms of thoughts and desires and things like that, and that is called Madhyama Va. And ultimately it is manifested through our mouth, and then we hear it through our ears. It's called the gross sound, Vaikari Va. So a part of this, we normally just deal with our gross sound, but we don't have mechanisms to deal with the mental sound, or the sound at the intelligence level, or access the spiritual sound that we all have within.
So this is why, let's take a moment and look at this chart a little bit closer, how this could create so much of cacophony. Because even though I may be saying something at the gross level, but my mind and my intelligence may be saying something completely different, right? I may be saying yes, but my mind and my intelligence may be saying no. And finally, of course, the source of all that is paravak, which is, the root chakra, it's transcendental sound. It's beyond this material sphere. So right now we are divided souls. Why? Because we are not in alignment with each other, and all of these different sounds, they're creating a cacophony, and it's creating so much stress within us. And this is why, practices like silent meditation, even though it is effective in stopping the Vaikari Vak, which is the gross sound, to some extent, maybe it might even work on the Madhyama Vak, which means that maybe the mental chatter for some time may be reduced, so it gives us some relief. But it definitely doesn't go to the root of our issue, which is the Pashanti Vak and the Paravak, right? So just like if you want to take care of the weeds in the garden, we can just chop off the weeds at the top. For some time the weeds are gone, but because the roots are still there, so it'll just spring up again. So same way, anything that we do to just deal with the vibration at the physical gross level is not going to really help us with the. So
I guess we stay as a divided personality. Our real self is spiritual, but that is buried under the layers of Pashanti Vak, which is the sound from the intelligence, the sound from the mind, and the gross sound.
Yeah, and the sound of the mind manifests as thinking, feeling, and willing, right? I want this. And then I start making plans around it, right? That I start thinking, feeling about it, and then I start saying, okay, I want this. So all of these different sounds that we carry, some of them we may be aware, so many of them we're not even aware. The samskaras or the impressions we carry, the traumas that we carry within us, those are all different kinds of varieties of sound. And here is the really interesting thing, which is that these sounds have formed emotional patterns for us. We have lived with these sounds, and we have associated with these sounds for such a long time that just like when rivers or water flows through a certain channel, it forms like very deep channels, and the sound continuously keeps going in that direction. The water keeps flowing in that direction. So same way, these thoughts have become very deeply entrenched within us as sound. And so this is what we are dealing with. We are just diagnosing the issue here.
I guess sound, the channels, they become habits, they become lifestyle choices that we make. So it's all kind of from the world of sound.
It's all coming from the world of sound, and it's all these thoughts which we cannot really control. How do you control? How do you empty those thoughts? Because they are such deep-rooted channels within our consciousness. That is, and that's why you see people, they just can't help it. They blurt out things, or they say things, and they don't want to say it, but they still end up saying it, hurtful things, right, or angry things. So this is all because of these deep-rooted channels that we all have within ourselves.
So this is again, we'll go into detail more in the second chapter, but sound is a powerful force to redirect our consciousness. We have right now our consciousness is external facing. It's kind of facing our mind. It's coming out through our gross body. But there is another consciousness that we can direct ourselves, which is the real consciousness of the soul or the self, which is directing in a different way. And nothing can act on the consciousness other than sound. Sound is kind of, you can think of it as the best doctor for our consciousness. And anyway, so this is just to show that.
I think we'll revisit this slide, because in order to understand this slide, we will have to first understand what is gross body, what is subtle body, what is the soul.
Yeah.
So we don't want to go into this in too much detail right now, but suffice it is to say that the sound that is taking us, that is manifesting from the soul through the subtle body, through the gross body, and coming out as physical sound, that's taking us in one direction. And when the same consciousness gets rerouted to the spiritual realm, then again, that happens through the medium of sound. Yeah. So, so before we proceed, I just wanted to add a few more points here, which is that what is the primary difference between material sound and spiritual sound? So material sound is a product of this relative world. What is the meaning of relative world? Relative world means that the object and the name, actually they're separate from each other. So for example, I might be sitting here, say in India, and I'm desiring perhaps some blueberries, right? Now, just by my saying blueberries, I cannot get the taste of blueberries, because the object blueberry and the word that is represented by the word, they're two distinctly different things. So that's called a material sound, right? And that's the nature of this relative world. But in the absolute realm, there is no difference between the sound or the name and the object that name represents.
And I guess that is, and that realization is one can have once one reaches the source of that spiritual sound within us, which is the paravak, where there is no difference between the object and then the name of the object.
And so, so the Vedas actually are saying, right, that just by connecting with spiritual sound vibration, one can change one's entire trajectory. So, while we are stuck in a particular life situation or stuck in a particular place and we don't know how to get out of it, simply by changing the quality of our sound vibration, we can actually change our experience or our position in this material world. So there's one, and that's something that is completely within our capacity, right? Just changing the quality of the sound vibration that we associate with can change the destiny and the flow of our life.
Yeah, and I guess in this video we'll see how not just, there are other mammals which are using actually sound to go where they want to go in the journey.
This is a journey of a whale which actually finds it.
Hawaii. These humpbacks spent their summer months feeding in the waters of Alaska. They've traveled 3,000 miles to get here, almost 100 miles a day, without food. 10,000 humpbacks converge for their Hawaiian luau, their only beacon, a song. Why humpback males sing is a mystery. Maybe to warn other males to stand down, to attract a mate.
Okay, so I guess they use these sounds or these songs to actually guide them back to where they've actually originally come from.
Yeah.
So this is actually kind of, there's also another fish called the salmon fish also, which actually finds its way back, but that it finds its way back using the sound, through the sound, through the sense of smell. But the point being that just like, an animal can find its way back through, through the sense of sound, we also can find our way back, through the sound vibration that we see, can change us from inside out. And that is actually the meaning of the word mantra. Actually, the word mantra is a Sanskrit word, which is made up of two parts to it. Mana means the mind, and tra means that which can free the mind. So this sound that can actually transform us inside out. And there are many, many mantras given in the Vedas. And of all those Vedas, of all those mantras are actually effective in helping us change our consciousness. The mantra that we, chant, or we, you focus our meditation on is the Hare Krishna mantra. And this is a very powerful mantra and a very effective mantra for this age, because it has no prerequisites. So anyone can practice this, and it actually directly allows us to connect with the Supreme Divine Person. Because the name, like we said, the name and the named, they're actually non-different from each other. I think there is a very beautiful, I think we should read this, because here Prabhupada is actually talking about this process of chanting. So let's read this, and I think that might be the... This transcendental sound vibration will immediately carry you to the transcendental platform, especially if you try to hear, so your mind is absorbed in the sound. This Hare Krishna sound vibration is non-different from Krishna, because Krishna is absolute. Since God is absolute, there is no difference between God's name and God himself. Therefore, as soon as you vibrate Hare Krishna, you immediately associate with the Supreme Lord and his energy. So if you want peace, if you want mental clarity, if you want freedom from fear, anxiety, stress, then this is actually a very powerful way for us to completely change our consciousness. Because right now, the reason why we are experiencing stress is because our consciousness is filled up with all of these cacophonic sounds. And so we cannot quiet it just by telling the mind, be quiet. The mind is not going to become quiet. But if we give the mind a different kind of sound, which is actually more tasty, more sweet, and which the mind will immediately latch onto, then all these other sounds, they'll all fade away. They'll all be neutralized. This is like a noise cancellation technology. And it'll be replaced by these spiritual sound, which will actually form new channels in our consciousness and will redirect our consciousness from matter to spirit.
So it's basically using this sound, we can transform the chaos around us and chaos within us into harmony. And that is what we are seeing in these verses of Bhagavad Gita. The Kauravas are in chaos, the Pandavas are in harmony, because they are associating with their spiritual sound.
So yeah, and this is actually right at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. We see that how this is a discussion that is actually embedded in the first chapter that we can easily miss. If we just read through it, we'll just think, oh, they're just a list of names of conch shells and that's about it. But actually what they're taking us to this place is like, oh, sound is the most important thing. And actually the power of the Vedas lies in the fact that they're called Shruti, which means that which is heard. So hearing is a very, very important part of self-realization. And many times people say, well, I want to see God, or I want to see the spiritual dimension. The Vedas say that the eyes can only see in a very limited way. But the ears, we have been given these ears, and these ears, there's unlimited sky, within these ears. And so we can hear unlimitedly. We cannot eat unlimitedly, right? But hearing is something we can do unlimitedly. And that's why the Vedas are actually they're all a form of hearing. So we'll pause here and see if you guys have any thoughts, comments, reflections, questions, doubts. A reflection is anything that you heard that you would like to repeat it to the rest of the group. Yes, go ahead, Tina.
I was questioning, I see the sound for the chakra. How can the sound, is that the sound, each different kind of sound can open up the chakra? Am I getting a right message?
No, it says what it means is that we have different sounds, different layers of sound residing in different chakras. So the spiritual sound resides in our the Muladhara chakra, which is the Paravak, which we don't have access to normally. Then the sound of the vision and the idea, where that's the next level of sound. So the spiritual sound is the original sound, but that gets transformed into this material sound, which is the first that is present that is residing in this Manipura chakra,
Which is the navel.
which is the navel. And from there, that sound further rises, further becomes more devolved, you can say, and that resides in our that's called the mental chakra, the mental sound. And finally, that sound further devolves and it comes out as what we hear from our. So it means that this is the different sounds residing in different chakras. And when we connect ourselves with this spiritual sound, then all our chakras can be revived actually. That sound can reach all the different chakras that we have.
And it can be realigned, because initially when we start chanting or chanting any mantra, then it's just happening at a physical level. So we are chanting, but our mind is going different places. Our intelligence is engaged somewhere else. So we are not, but as we keep doing this, first of all, we are just using the physical purification. There's a physical purification, but then there'll be mental, it'll then go down to the next level, which is that the mind will start getting aligned to what we are saying. And then the intelligence will also start getting aligned to what we are thinking and what we are speaking. And so that way, as you were using the word devolved, so same way we can actually go down and again reconnect to that spiritual sound.
Re-evolve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Ganesh.
Hello. I had a realization from what you said about sound. I noticed how, yes, it's true how it's unlimited, because sometimes I fall asleep listening to something, and then as you're sleeping and dreaming, you still hear the music, and it makes you dream about things with the sound incorporated. So great realization about the power of sound, and thank you so much. I appreciate for the presentation.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. That's a very good point, actually, because when we are sleeping, there's no physical sound, but in our dream, there's still so much activity going on. We can talk to people, we can hear people speaking.
It's like a whole world created through sound, through the mental sound in our sleeping state, right? And that world is, we are fully experiencing that world. It's not that we are, when we are in that world of dream, then we are there. We are experiencing a whole new life created by sound, mental sound.
Sukanya, any thoughts from you? Love to hear your thoughts on this.
No, I'm just thinking about everything I've heard. It's the importance of sound, and yes, it is very interesting. And how you correlated it to the science and to the natural world. Yes, it's got a lot of ideas coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for. Does this resonate at all? Is there something that strongly resonated with you that perhaps you want to share back?
Just what you said right at the end. As you said, that when we do the chanting, when we chant the mantras, it's just our mouths and our brain is not, it's just going wildly, as I discussed with you. But as you keep on doing it, it will go to the inner, the sound will connect to the inner soul. Hopefully that will happen as I start chanting more. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. You know, it's amazing how as we keep on chanting, then so many layers of ourselves actually become revealed. And in fact, I think even in the field of psychology, they say that what we experience, the conscious brain is only a very small part, right? We have, you know, such a huge part of us, which is unconscious.
And that subconscious is basically actually this domain of this Madhyama Vak, which is the mental sound. And even beyond that is the Pashyanti Vak, which is the sound in the Manipura chakra. That is the subconscious world.
Nice, thank you. Aditi, any thoughts from you? Amrita. Did we lose Aditi?
I had one comment.
Hey, Ari, go ahead.
I was saving it for the end, but I thought I would
say it now. I don't know actually even if this was mentioned in your presentation, but in the Gospel of John, the first line is, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So in Christianity too, there's this tradition of sound being preeminent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did mention that, but thank you. You actually gave us the exact quotation, you
Yeah.
know, this is wonderful. Yeah, it's you know, science saying that, all the different religious traditions, spiritual traditions are saying it. And of course, when we apply it, the real test of it is when we start applying the spiritual sound in our own lives. And then one thing we will start noticing is things that we never thought we could give up. You know, thinking patterns, behavioral patterns, toxic patterns that we may find ourselves stuck in, grief, anxiety, fear, stress. All of these things, you'll see them actually, you know, going through these stages of changes, and one will start to feel free, and all that by the effect of sound.
Hare Krishna. So I just
Yeah.
wanted, I really like the point you made that even our thoughts are sounds, and you know what we think actually you know feeds into our consciousness. So in that sense, like you know, we constantly have to strive to you know get that noise out of our minds, and the best way to infuse that is with the positive sound vibration of the mantra. So you know, I like that point. I was just thinking, reflecting on that.
Very nice, Amrita. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. In fact, you know, people who've been married for a long time can even attest to that, that you can actually hear the other person's mind. So, you know, it's, you know, it's something that, you know, both of us have also experienced it, that one person is thinking something and the other person will actually, it's not been spoken physically, but you can still hear it. So there's a whole realm, you know, at the mental level that we have no access to, and yet it exists. Anybody else? Guru Shankar, any thoughts from you? Renu, Koma?
Yeah, I mean,
Your connection is really bad, I think.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could relate a lot of the scientific stuff which you had shown, a lot of credence to what we've been told, you know, for a period of time.
You're really, yeah,
Your voice is breaking up.
your voice is breaking up, I think. Maybe you want to type it
In the chat.
in the chat, yeah. Sorry about that.
Renu, any thoughts from you?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji. So I had one realization. At the beginning of the slide, you mentioned there was this sentence, like, what is your vibration? So I was thinking about it, and I realized that vibration is nothing but energy, right? And I mean, our vibration is made up of so many internal sounds that you mentioned. And sometimes what happens is, like, I mean, that sound that is internal, it not just impacts us, but it also impacts the person you know, who is in contact with us. So and you know, sometimes, like, you know, there are like material sounds, you know, there's like stress, there's anxiety, so that may all impact the other person also. So I mean, my understanding is that you know, mantra meditation is something that helps us calm that, you know, internal chatter, you know, to purify our vibration. Yeah, that's what I.
So nice. Really like the way you put it, Renu. It's true, you know, it changes our, and in that way, we actually become, you know, we can actually help and serve others more. All these relationships that we may have, which are very difficult, just by changing our own vibration, we can hopefully, you know, change the environment around us. You know, whether it's with our children or with our spouse or whoever, our family members. Nice.
Hare Krishna Mataji and Prabhuji.
Yes.
I had a question regarding, like, when I was thinking about the sound, the first word they say Om. So as that shloka which I was remembering, Omite Kaksharam Brahma Vyaharan Mamanusmaram Yaf Prayati Satyajandeham, that is it like the mantra which we follow, Hare Krishna, and how to reach through chakras, the process. I was just thinking about like before leaving the body, and how the soul will come out through the Sahasrara chakra. So the relation between the Om chanting, and I just want to understand Hare Krishna mantra and the Om mantra. I think all comes maybe the same mantras to follow.
Right.
Yeah, the Om is actually included in the Hare Krishna mantra. If you break Om, it has three sounds: A, U, Ma, and A represents Krishna, U represents Krishna's spiritual energy, and then Ma represents us, the living entities, the Jiva energy. And then that is also included in the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare is Krishna's spiritual energy. Krishna is present in the name Krishna. And in the Hare Krishna mantra, the Jiva or the living entities is not directly present, but it is calling out to these two entities. So it's present as the speaker and the person who's approaching. So Prabhupada explains quite a bit in the 7th chapter that how the Om is already included in the Hare Krishna mantra. So one who's chanting that, they are getting the full benefit of chanting Om. And the process of extricating the soul from this material world happens much faster to the Hare Krishna mantra, because there's a personal relationship being established immediately.
Yeah, there are many mantras given in the Vedas, but many of those mantras have prerequisites. Just like if someone, I remember when we used to go through Nimai's college catalog and look for courses, it used to be so frustrating, because in order to do this course, you have to have this prerequisite. And it was like, okay, well, you can't do this. So it's quite a struggle. So the Vedas are also like that. There are all these mantras given, but in order to chant this mantra, you need to have this prerequisite. And so Om is actually a mantra that is actually in this age of Kali Yuga, which is an age of mass distraction, very, very difficult to actually practice. And the yogis would go off into the Himalayas, sit in a cave, give up all association with the outside world, and then be able to focus. So this Hare Krishna mantra is actually much more accessible, and it's a portable mantra, which means that there are no rules and regulations required to actually chant this. One could chant it in any condition, in any situation, no prerequisites, and the effect is actually much greater, because it's the result is actually immediate. So that's why we recommend this mantra. But yes, you're always free to chant Om if that's what inspires you. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is something we should end with. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastakam, he actually speaks about how there are countless names of the Supreme Divine in all different traditions. And each one of those names are actually fully potent to actually grant the practitioner with full benefits. And so a person can actually chant any name of the Supreme Divine in their particular tradition, and they would still get the full benefit.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji and Prabhuji. That was a exact correlation. I could get it in the mantra what we are chanting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we'll stop here.
We'll end with chanting.
Yeah, we're going to end with chanting. So who's leading the chanting today, Amrita?
Yeah, I'm supposed to do it, but I wanted to